Those opposed say nay. Right, motion is carried. Council, may I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented tonight?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. Councilmember Shepherd, I assume you want to remove the warrants from the consent agenda.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Anything else, any other discussion on the agenda? All right, I don't see any hands go up. So with that, all those in favor say aye.
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 Councilmember Ross. Councilmember Ross, go ahead.
I don't see the warrants on the agenda. Are they on the agenda? We're missing.
Approval of warrants is listed under the consent agenda, minutes and then approval of warrants.
Huh.
You
Okay. You have it
should-
open?
Well, look at the screen. It's on the screen right now.
Oh, okay. I just pulled one up from the city of Snoqualmie today, so maybe it was just added. So my apologies.
Well, I'm looking at the same one that whoever's sharing the screen. I'm looking at the app builder, so maybe
Right.
it's different than the.
Okay.
I hope in the packet you've all received it's included. Councilman Osei, go ahead.
Yeah, I noticed the same thing. It's listed as approval of warrants as a header, but I believe it's down further under committees, I believe. There's a little, no, I guess that was the audit results, sorry. Yeah, usually there's no attachment as part of the warrants there.
Okay, well, if you'd like, we could just make a modification to the agenda to make sure to include approval of warrants right after the consent agenda, which is essentially only the minutes.
Is it hyperlinked on the warrants? If you click on it, is the attachments there?
No, Chair, staff be aware, if you pull the agenda off the website currently, it does not show warrants. We can make a motion later to add warrants under F&A so that we are clean with the public record.
Is that a motion, Councilor Holloway?
Sure, I move to add warrants to the F&A. Well, I move to add warrants directly after the consent agenda.
Point of information.
Go ahead, Councilor Mayhew.
Mayor, I believe this agenda was already voted on and approved, wasn't it?
No, I asked for a motion, but interrupted the yay vote, never completed the vote of yays and nays because I thought.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councilmember.
Referee flagged the call. We're waiting for the ruling.
Yeah. So is there a second to Councilmember Holloway's motion?
Second.
All right, motion and a second to add the warrants immediately following the consent agenda. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. All right, motion is approved. All right, any other items for the agenda? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed say nay. All right, motion is carried with the edits as noted. All right, moving on to citizens' comments. At this time, is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on anything that's not on the agenda? I noticed there are about 5 folks of busyness here. Deanna Gregory is actually a consultant that will be speaking to one of our agenda bills, so you could go ahead and let her into the meeting. For those of you from the public that are joining, in the center of the bottom of your screen should be a little green hand. If you want to click on that to raise your hand to get our attention, we can make sure and unmute you and allow you an opportunity to speak. So at this point, I don't see anybody raising their hand. So we will move on. I'll give it a couple more seconds here. All right, with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda, which only includes the minutes. Asking for a motion to approve the minutes for the June 28th regular city council meeting and the July 7th special city council meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes and stand. Is there any discussion on the minutes? All right, seeing no hands go up, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. All right, motion is approved. So as is protocol for anything, well, I guess it wasn't necessarily, it was a little confused as to whether it was on the agenda or not. And, but we'll now immediately take up the approval of warrants as well as motion. So can I have a motion and a second to approve the warrants as presented?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the warrants. All those in favor say aye.
Did you want to take?
I'm sorry. Yes, thank you. No. Any discussion? Thank you. Councilor Mayhew, your hand was up and then you took it down. Was that?
Oh, I was just waiting. I thought you would take public comment first.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item prior to action? Okay, just raise your hand and get my attention. Get you unmuted. See no one's hands go up. Councilor Mayhew, I'll go to you as the chair of the F&A committee, and then we'll take Councilor Shepherd.
Yes, fellow council members, a reminder that the listing of claims and warrants was distributed to all council members in advance of last week's F&A Finance and Administration Committee meeting. It lists the payees and amounts for each claim being paid, as is done with other cities in Washington. These claims are the normal routine expenses of the city, including the payroll for city employees. As a reminder, if any council member wishes to pull individual claims from the schedule for separate voting, they may do so. But voting to not approve the entire listing means the city would not pay employees or the many contractors who provide routine services such as maintenance of parks and city facilities. Any council member may ask for information about any claim they would like more information about. No requests for more information were received from any council member on any of these claims. The committee members reviewed the F&A committee members reviewed the claims and warrants and recommends approval.
Thank you. Councilor Shepherd.
Yes, so I have been wanting to look at all the supporting documents having to do with the warrants, which is normal procedure for other cities. And we do not do that here in Snoqualmie. So without being able to see the supporting documents, I have no way of knowing what would be a question that I would have. So I will not be voting for the warrants.
All right, seeing no other hands or questions up for further discussion, all those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Mayhew.
I would just share with fellow council members that in fact, other cities do not provide such support to council members. In fact, many other cities, such as our neighboring city of Issaquah, prohibit that. We do not. But again, any claim that any council member would like to see more information on, all they have to do is let the F&A committee know, and we'll arrange to have that done.
All right, thank you. Again, I don't see any hands up or any further discussion. So all those in favor say aye.
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 All right, those opposed say nay.
No.
All right, motion passes 5-1. Moving on to the ordinances, Community Development Committee, Agenda Bill 21031, ordinance relating to fence regulations providing for public safety by limiting fence height and design near intersections, adopting amendments to Chapter 17.35 and Chapter 17.55 of the Snoqualmie Municipal Code, and providing for severability and an effective date. This was introduced last month on June 28th and is ready for action tonight. The summary statement was already read in, so if the chair of the committee could simply read the motion, that would be great.
Move to approve ordinance. Do you know what the number is?
Oh, yeah, excuse us. We're gonna have a few hiccups. We're gonna have to look that one up real quick. Nicole, did you by chance
Yes,
get the?
it's Agenda Bill 21031.
No, we need an ordinance number. In other words,
Oh, I'm sorry. We
don't.
don't have that tonight. We thought we would assign the ordinance number after the vote had passed tonight.
All right, I'll refer to Bob Sturbank, assuming Bob is here. Oh, yeah, he is. Bob, could you weigh in as to whether we can?
Well, we need to have an ordinance that's being moved. And typically at this time is when the clerk would provide the ordinance number so that the person reading the ordinance in or moving its adoption can refer to the specific document.
Right, we may have to take a short pause to go back and figure out where the number left off on the last approval of the last ordinance in order to do the next successive number. I guess the question to you was, without the ordinance number, is there a way to proceed on a vote without that ordinance number?
You could just, the motion could refer to it by title, the beginning part of the title. It's kind of indicated here on the, as an exhibit on the agenda on the screen that is up right now in an abbreviated fashion. If someone has it open, I can.
Yeah. Our apologies, council, as we anticipated, this is no fault of Nicole. She's obviously stepped into a role on an interim basis. We've had a few setbacks with the city clerk appointment.
I think, Mayor, the motion could be, a motion to approve the ordinance relating to fence regulations, which is the broad title, that is included as an exhibit in the council packet for July 12th. That would suffice. There's only one.
All right, Councilmember Ross, are you comfortable with doing something like that? Meanwhile, if there's any staff that can creatively and quickly figure out where was the last, what was the ordinance number of the last ordinance approved, that will give us a number that we can then use on all successive ordinances tonight and make things simpler. Nicole?
Do you mean to start or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Move to approve the ordinance relating to fence regulations that is included in the council packet dated July 12th, providing for public safety by limiting fence height and design near intersections, adopting amendments to chapter 17.35 and chapter 17.55 of the Snoqualmie Municipal Code, and providing for severability and an effective date. This is the second reading of the motion.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Ross. And again, I appreciate the council's flexibility and understanding given the circumstances. This is a role Nicole wasn't necessarily chomping at the bit to play, but we really appreciate she stepped up. And we're obviously going to have a few hiccups with details like this. But we'll make sure and get those ordinances numbers on it subsequent in a minute. Any further? Oh, sorry. Is that Councilmember Mayhew?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on Agenda Bill 21031, ordinance relating to fence regulations. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item prior to council action? All right, I don't see any hands from members of the public. Councilor Ross, go ahead.
So the council requested Planning Commission to do an evaluation of fence heights and locations, specifically consideration of fences along street side yards and alleys. And they have completed a thorough review, and the Community Development Committee is recommending approval by council. Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments, council? All right, I know there was a more robust conversation at the last council meeting, so I think most questions were addressed by then. I thank the staff for the time on that. With no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. All right, motion passes unanimously. Moving on to Finance Administration Committee, Agenda Bill 21043. Ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of a limited tax general obligation refunding bond in the principal amount of not to exceed $3 million for the purpose of refunding certain outstanding general obligation bonds to the city, providing the form of the bond and delegating authority to approve the sale and final terms of the bond. Again, this was introduced on June 28th and is ready for action tonight. And the summary statement was already read in, so you can simply make the motion. And again, maybe with the city's attorney, you could have some assistance with stating that motion to include the ordinance authorizing issuance of a sale and limited tax obligation bond.
Move to approve an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of a limited tax general obligation refunding bond in the principal amount of not to exceed $3 million for the purpose of refunding certain outstanding general obligation bonds of the city, providing the form of the bond, and delegating authority to approve the sale and final terms of the bond.
All right, do I have a second, council?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve Agenda Bill 21043 regarding the ordinance authorizing the issuance of sale and tax obligation bond as stated by the chair of the Finance Administration Committee. Is there any members of the public that would like to comment on this item prior to action?
Mayor,
Yes,
sorry.
Nicole.
Mayor, staff has been working behind the scenes and we have the 3 ordinance numbers, if that would help.
Perfect. Go ahead. Let's
So
go.
the fence ordinance is 1249. And the one we're dealing with right now is 1250. And the next one will be 1251, and I'll make a note in the minutes.
Great. Thank you very much, Nicole.
Good
Appreciate
job.
All right, we've already read this and I think it's all queued up, so we'll just open it for discussion. And no members of the public raised their hands, so Councilor Mayhew, go ahead as chair of the committee. I'll start with you.
Right. Just as a reminder, fellow council members, I know we've discussed this for several meetings and in fact had our first reading at our last meeting. As a reminder, this is a refinancing of existing bonds, existing indebtedness. There's no new indebtedness or no additional indebtedness being taken out. This is to take advantage of the lower interest rate environment. And in fact, I believe that the finance director has some preliminary information in now on the expected savings, but it is as much as, or I think possibly a bit more than we had previously discussed. And so just as a reminder, that is what we're looking at doing, advance refunding in order to lower our interest rate on existing debt.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Mayhew. Councilor Shepherd.
Yeah, so I noticed that in MSRB, the statement of outstanding general obligation debt for the year ended 2017 is the most recent statement that we have on file, on record with this organization. And prior to that, we've had annually, we've posted it annually between 2013 and 2017, and generally posting by the following year. So we haven't been posting for several years about where we stand as far as what the beginning outstanding debt is for the year and the ending outstanding debt. And I think I'd like to see that before I vote on this.
We do, Councilmember Shepherd, we are in full compliance with all of our federal requirements. The auditors look at that every year. So to say we're not in compliance, we are in compliance. And yes, we do, every year we do the annual financial report. We've already submitted the preliminary financial report to the state for 2020. And again, all of those are on the state website, the state auditor's website every single year. It shows the beginning balance of our debt, the ending balance of it, and the schedules, the debt schedules that are included in the financial report. So we do report that every single year.
Robert, thank you for the response to the question, but I've been asked the council members to keep their comments germane to the agenda bill on the floor for discussion right now. Councilmember Jeans, go ahead.
The reading of the recommended motion reflects an action date in June. So when we finally put this together, I'd like that to be changed to July 12th.
Yeah, I'm not seeing what you're seeing, Bob. Is that a motion to make an amendment somewhere where we have a bit of a typo or didn't update a number? Or... Go ahead, Robert.
I see it. I see it. It's in the recommended motion body. I see exactly what he's seeing. It says action June 28th, but up top it does say action July 12th.
Okay, so
we'll make that change.
It's a typo issue. We'll clean that up then. Yeah, thank you.
You may note that I did not read that portion of the motion in for the obvious reason.
Great, thank you. Councilor May, you had your hand up? Councilor May, you still have your hand up. Did you have another comment or question?
I do not appear to be able to lower it because it is lowered on my screen.
It's lowered now, yeah.
Thank you, sorry.
And Robert and Nicole still have their hands up too, so I don't know if there's still questions or other comments.
I'll defer to Councilmember Holloway. He has his hand up.
Yeah, Councilmember Holloway, go ahead.
So I just want to remind council, this is action enabling us to make use of a lower interest rate with even what I call the origination fees. Within 2 years, this action will save the citizens of Snoqualmie for the next 18 years. So vote no on this agenda bill is a vote not to save money for the citizens of Snoqualmie. Don't understand such statements. Second, sorry, Chair, but MSRB reporting is not a requirement for action on part of the council.
Again, that's not germane to what's on the
Agreed.
Okay, Robert, what is that for members of the public or anyone else for being recorded? The number, I think the approximate savings is north of $350,000.
Yeah, so I mean, until the closing date actually happens, that could change a bit, but our estimates are actually up to after the closing costs are up to $388,000 for the life of the bond. So very good savings. We, per the F&A committee's recommendations, we did start preliminary conversations, but again, it's still subject to your approval with Commerce Bank, which is owned by Zions Bank out of Utah, to place this bond, and that is the savings amount based on that placement. So it was very competitive. We had several banks respond, and I'm not sure Thomas is on or not, but we had several banks that responded to this. We got very competitive rates. So again, it goes to the strength of our financials, strength of our debt ratings, that we had so many responses, and the fact that we're willing to get, a higher refunding estimate than originally thought. So we're in a very strong fiscal position, which is great.
Thank you, Robert. I don't see any other hands up or questions. So with that, I'll ask that all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay.
No.
Motion passes 5-1. All right, moving on to the Agenda Bill 21047, ordinance providing for submission of a ballot proposition to the qualified electors of the city at an election to be held on November 2nd, 2021, imposing a sales and use tax within the city in the amount of 0.2% for a period of the longer of 10 years or the time necessary for repayment of any indebtedness issued by the city as authorized by RCW 36.73.070 for the purpose of paying for or financing the cost of transportation improvements, repealing sections 2 and 4, section C of ordinance number 1223A, imposing a vehicle license fee and providing for severability and effective date. Again, this was introduced on the 28th and is ready for action tonight. Summary statement was read in, it just requires the most reading. And this is ordinance number 1251.
1251, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
And Mayor, perhaps those who are not actively speaking could turn off their microphones. We're hearing some feedback.
I think that was the city attorney confirming it was 1251.
Yeah, there's some, just the entire time you were talking, there was some feedback. And
Some of it, yes. Okay, yeah, thank you. We'll do that. Thank you.
Move to approve ordinance 1251, providing for submission of a ballot proposition to the qualified electors of the city at an election to be held on November 2nd, 2021, imposing a sales and use tax within the city in the amount of 0.2% for a period of the longer of 10 years or the time necessary for repayment of any indebtedness issued by the city as authorized by RCW 36.73.070 for the purpose of paying for or financing the cost of transportation improvements, repealing sections 2 and 4C of ordinance number 1223A, which imposed a vehicle license fee, and providing for severability and an effective date.
Second.
I have a motion, a second, to approve ordinance number 1251 as stated by Councilmember Mayhew. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item prior to action? I don't see anybody from the public's hands up, so I'll go ahead and turn to the chair of the F&A committee first. Go ahead, Councilmember Mayhew.
Fellow council members, again, I know that we're all aware of this. We've been talking about this for some time, including in our retreat earlier this year and so forth. And then again, of course, at our last meeting where we had some discussion as well. This is a proposal to change our method of funding our transportation benefit district. That is a tax that is levied specifically for the purpose of transportation improvements in the city, to move that to a sales tax, which is paid for by not just city residents, but anyone who visits our city and buys things here that are subject to sales tax. In exchange for that, or not in exchange, but at the same time, eliminate the city's vehicle tax or car tab fee of $40 currently per car per year. That is what we're doing. It does as a reminder, because it's a sales tax, it's levied as a percentage of sales. It has the added feature that as we go into the future, it will go up kind of commensurate with inflation, as opposed to a $40 car tab fee, which is just a fixed amount, which loses its value. And whether it's $20 or $40, it loses its value each year because of inflation, leading to this perception that we keep raising taxes when we're perhaps just trying to keep them steady. In any event, it does have that feature. It also has the feature that it is paid less. It is a less regressive tax. It ends up hitting those at the lower end of the income scale less than it hits than the car tab fee hits those at the lower end of the fee of the income scale. So it has a number of benefits, and that's the summary. It does increase the total collected a bit as compared to the current car tab fee, but the car tab fee's been set, half of it's been set at the same level for quite some time, losing the value and therefore its ability to contribute to our transportation needs in the city. And of course, as you all know, our transportation needs in the city well exceed the amount of this tax. This just makes a significant contribution towards those needs. So that just really is a reminder, I think, of our discussion so far.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Shepherd, and then Councilmember Holloway.
So I am concerned about making this available for a pro and con statement on the voter pamphlet. I know that the city of North Bend has put out something with the Valley Record, encouraging people to join a committee to draft statements for their pamphlet for a ballot that they're going to put in the pamphlet. And I don't know what we're doing that's comparable to that.
Mark, I'll throw that to you if you want to speak to staff efforts in that regard.
Yeah, certainly. Well, we wouldn't be able to talk about the pro and con statement until this ordinance is actually approved. So once that would happen, then we would actually bring it forward with a pro-con committee and a statement at that point, if it is approved.
Yeah, and
So
excuse me, Councilmember Shepherd, Joan Pliego is already working on some, verbiage to Mark's point. In the event that the council approves the ordinance tonight, we are already proactively preparing to put a notice out inviting interest for a pro and con committee.
Well, the reason I'm concerned about it is because last time we had something on the ballot, there was no con statement in the voter pamphlet. And I'd like to have some reassurance that that won't happen again.
That's actually quite common. There's nothing that requires you to force people to oppose a matter if no one in the community strongly opposes it. But I understand your statement.
How would a resident who's interested in providing a con statement, who would they contact in order to get it submitted?
That will be in the press release that will go out. We're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. Let's wait for the council action, and then a press release would go out to that effect with that information. Councilmember Holloway.
So as mayor has stated in the past, I'm more than willing for things to go out to public vote. Let them make a decision. My concern though, in order to get me over the hump, I need one more fact in here. And that being that this will represent a tax increase to the community above the $20 tab. In addition to that, the external entity tax increase is there appetite to include a statement probably in the last whereas of page 2 to include that this is, again, a tax increase to the city citizens and businesses of Snoqualmie, as well as to those external entities?
When you say external entities, you mean visitors coming through town spending?
Yeah, visitors coming through town. If you really want it, I would propose, okay, I move to add a statement to the last whereas and in the page 2 that says, in support of these transportation maintenance and improvement needs, this will increase the per capita transportation tax to the citizens and business of the community, in addition to external parties conducting purchases within the city.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to second as stated by Councilmember Holloway. Is there any discussion of the proposed amendment? Hands were up on the main motion, so Councilmember Ross, next up, I guess I'll go ahead and turn to you.
Oh, you're on mute.
Councilmember,
If we're talking about this motion, where are you recommending that goes into?
The last whereas on the end of page 2 of the ordinance. Page 2 of 13. I am not proposing a change to the proposed ballot wordage.
2 of 13 or 3 of 13? The last word on 2 of 13.
We ought to have those numbered, but yeah.
Okay. Okay. I have some other comments, but I'll wait.
Councilmember Lassay.
Yeah, I just want to point out that I seconded so we could have some discussion. I'm not yet either in favor or against the proposed amendment.
Okay, Councilmember Mayhew.
Yeah, sorry, my video's off because my it's become unstable.
Yeah.
I think I understand what Councilmember Holloway's purpose is in this, and I think I am generally in agreement. However, the particular wording I think is that he suggested, I think is confusing. I think it's entirely possible that on that a resident, this is based on the various analyses that our staff has prepared and presented to us. I think we've all seen them. That suggests that, for a Snoqualmie resident, their tax may go down. Now, Councilmember Holloway did mention the $20. It looks like it probably goes up for the average per capita in Snoqualmie against that. It looks like it most likely goes down as compared to the 40. And of course, we've got to go through another year and a half from now until we've paid, to the 40 could be looked at going down to fulfill our council goal of paying for that on-ramp. So I think there's sort of a bunch of assumptions that end up in there. And I'd be sort of reluctant to say to a resident, oh, your tax is going up, when very possibly it isn't. But I think perhaps a different way of focusing on this is something that just points out that the total expected collections go from about, and I'm going to use round numbers, I think our staff could give us a closer approximation, but go from something like 200,000 a year to something like 400,000 a year in total collections. I think just pointing that out, along with the fact that, a significant portion of that will be paid now by non-residents, might be a sort of more fact-based way of just alerting people that there is a tax increase here, but without necessarily saying what it would impact a per capita, where I don't think we really know that information. So I'd hate to be misleading.
Yeah.
So in summary, I'm against the wording as proposed, but I would be supportive of something more along the lines of what I just suggested if Councilmember Holloway feels that might accomplish his objective.
I would be amenable if you want to write that up and state it as a motion. Yeah.
So I'll because Robert has his hand up and because he might have some information that's relevant to the conversation, I'll turn to him next. Go ahead, Robert.
No, I was just going to say the way I estimated that number that Drew had in the presentation was, again, it's a pure estimate, because with sales tax, with property tax and car tabs, if you live in the city, you have to pay it. Sales tax, you don't necessarily have to pay it because, as we know, a lot of our residents leak to other cities. You go to McDonald's, it's in North Bend. They're getting the sales tax, we're not. So we took a rough estimate of what we thought was the average purchaser and what items would be Snoqualmie residents. But because there's no zip code data when you purchase something, there's not enough ground level data. So that it's a rough estimate, meaning it, depending on how much you purchase at home versus purchase at a big box store in Issaquah, it could be more or less per capita depending on what your purchasing habits are. So back to Mayor Pro Tem's point, and also Councilmember Holloway's point, it could go up for some people, it could go down for some people. A lot of it depends on their spending habits. So
And
it's not an exact.
and as we've seen from the data provided to the council, most of those cities that our residents are leaking to, if not all of them, have higher sales tax rates than Snoqualmie does, at least by 0.2%. I didn't see exactly whose hands went up first. Councilmember Ross, I'll come to you, and then, oh, Councilmember Jeans, I think you were waiting patiently. I'll go to you first, and then Councilmember Ross.
You're
Councilmember
on
Jeans.
mute, Bob.
All right, well, Councilmember Jean's hand went down. Bob Sturbank has his hand up.
No, stay with me.
All right, go ahead.
So Councilmember Holloway has a good suggestion, I think, but I think by way of seconding comments made by Councilmember Holloway, I'd like to get the city attorney's view of this added clarifying language, whether it's clarifying or further confusing. I'd like to hear from the city attorney.
Well, that's a great segue to the city attorney who's got his hand up. Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just, I'll leave it, I guess, to the judgment of the council, whether they find it clarifying or confusing. I was just going to point out another option.
Thank you, Bob.
That, as council probably will remember, the Public Disclosure Commission, the PDC, allows the city to issue one informational flyer and distribute it on a ballot measure that provides information about the potential impact of a ballot measure. And I would anticipate that the administration would be putting something together here if the council approves the ordinance. And that would be a place to share factual information about possible hypotheticals and tax burdens, fees and versus taxes, et cetera. As apart from drafting recital changes, on the dais, just another option for the council to consider that may address Councilmember Holloway's concern.
Councilmember Ross, and then Councilmember Shepherd.
Actually, I was going to ask for Councilmember Holloway to repeat your motion, if you would. Can you reread your motion and then have a comment?
Well, I'm almost to the stage to withdraw a motion if Jim is ready to reposition the statement in the manner he had suggested. Are you there, Jim?
Have additional comments, or we want to wait to come back to you after that? Or?
Okay. Well, and actually, based on that, if Councilmember Lasay will accept, I will withdraw a motion, assuming that there's a follow-on motion from Mr. Mayhew repositioning the statement.
I'm in agreement with that, as long as we do have some sort of motion that is addressing a tax. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah, okay. Well, I see Councilor Mayhew's hand is going up, so you'll get an answer to your question. I wanted to say, following Bob Sturbank's comments, that I have concerns about the accuracy of a statement of the motion you've made, Councilor Holloway, for the pure reason that we know that if this levy was to fail, the council would leave the $40 fee in place through September of 2022 at a minimum in order to pay off the temporary on-ramp, as Councilor Mayhew said. And in lieu of anything else, it's also likely that whether there was a 6-month or year or 1 or 2 year gap, that the council would be, because you're going to need revenue to take care of capital, or those capital costs could go through the roof if they're neglected due to deferred maintenance. It's very likely the council is going to have to come back and look at enacting a permanent $40 card tab fee, in which case it's not necessarily accurate to say that passing this ends up in a per capita increase. As Councilmember Mayhew said, it could be a per capita decrease. So, but it sounds like you've heard that, and that's why you're amenable to Mayhew. So, Jim, are you ready to propose some language?
I just need 2 numbers from the finance staff, and I think they hopefully are I think they're guessing what those 2 numbers are. But I was just going to raise the point of order that I think once, and maybe the city attorney could correct me, I think once a motion has been made and seconded, I believe that it can't just be withdrawn. I think maybe Councilmember Holloway would be just like us to move to a vote if we all just vote against it, that's the end, and then I'm prepared to bring the other motion. I think perhaps under Robert's rules, that's the correct way to proceed. I'm not sure.
All right. I think we pulled things off the floor with the original motion maker.
We've done that before.
Yeah, Bob, do you have any
I was
opinion?
going to say the practice of the council has been if the maker and the seconder, consent, that motions have been withdrawn.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. All right, Councilor May, if you were still working on that, or did you need some numbers from the staff, or do I have a couple, at least Councilor Shepherd that still has some further comments?
Yeah, I just need from staff, they have previously presented a annual or the amount they estimate a year we generate from the existing car tabs. I want to say that's a number in the 200,000 range. And then I believe they've done a rough estimate of what 0.2% would generate, at least in year one. I believe it's somewhere in the $400,000 range. If they would be able to prepare, I don't need the exact number, but I think we'd all like to have roughly what those two numbers are. If they could provide those in the next, time period here, that'd be helpful to the motion.
I suspect Drew's got those numbers on the top of his.
Mayor Pro Tem, the second number, I'm sorry, you said the first number was the sales tax, the second number?
Sorry, the first number is the current vehicle tax, roughly what we're generating per year on that. And the second is what we roughly think we generate from the 2-tenths sales tax, at least say in the first year, wherever our estimate is.
Councilor Mayu, I think a relevant number that also pertains to this, did you want the percentage, the estimated percentage of what would be paid by non-residents versus residents?
I believe I've got that already.
Okay, perfect. All right, it's a bit of a muddle in terms of what motion on it. We're back to the main motion essentially at this point. So while you're crafting that, so I'll go ahead and turn to, Drew, did you want to add to that? Go ahead.
Well, all I was going to do was to provide you guys with the numbers, or to provide the Mayor Pro Tem with the numbers if you like.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So on slide 4 of the presentation that we delivered at the previous council meeting, we stated that the 0.2% transportation sales and use tax would generate approximately $550,000 in annual ongoing revenue. So that is bullet point number 1 from that slide. In addition to that, we also stated that the current $40 vehicle license fee, that is the $40 vehicle license fee, generates approximately $406,000 annually.
And then, I'm sorry, did you give the estimated number on the 2/10? Yeah.
Yes, that was the $550,000 number.
All right. Councilor Shepherd, go ahead. I'm sorry, Councilor Shepherd, before you, I think the city attorney had some other information to give it to the council. Or unless you forgot your hand up, Bob.
No, my apologies, Mayor. I left my hand up.
Okay, Councilor Shepherd, go ahead.
I noticed that this is supposed to sunset in 10 years unless there's debt that has to be repaid. And so far what I've seen since I've been on council is we always have debt to be repaid. So I don't see that 10 years as a likely event for this tax.
It's not just any debt you can consolidate to this revenue source. It has to be debt that is specifically borrowed against this revenue source, specifically used for street improvement programs.
Can it be used for non-utility capital improvement?
Yes, only transportation related ones. Go ahead, Robert.
No, Mayor, I was going to say exactly what you said. It can be used for non-utility CIP projects so long as they qualify as transportation improvements, as that term is defined in Chapter 3673.
Yeah, and the STIP, the 6-year transportation improvement plan. So only those items that are listed on the STIP or transportation related capital projects on the non-utility CIP.
So would this be used to allow us to borrow more money?
The council could have that flexibility if they so chose, yes. For a street improvement project, the council could borrow against this revenue source for a street improvement project. For example, let's say you wanted to do the parkway and at a $6 million price tag, you could, do a 10 or 15-year bond against that. And in 15 years, when the parkway is up for another grind and overlay again, you reset the bond and start over again. It gives you now a reoccurring sustainable revenue source to take care of a significant capital liability or asset. I should have said asset, not liability. Parkway's not a liability. Councilmember Mayhew.
And Mayor, you said street improvement, but I think you meant transportation improvement, right?
Yes, that's a little more flexible term.
So move to amend the motion to add an additional whereas, reading as follows. Whereas the vehicle tax generates approximately $406,000 per year, paid entirely by residents, and a 0.2% sales tax would generate approximately $550,000 per year, paid in significant part by non-residents.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, motion a second is stated by Councilmember Mayhew. Any discussion? Councilmember Mayhew, I think the only thing I would maybe advise on the first sentence you said, you called it what'd you call it, something tax, a vehicle tax?
Yes, I may have the wrong name.
I think it would be vehicle registration fee.
Or vehicle.
Drew or Robert, correct me, or Bob, what's the proper term?
It's referred to in the statute as a vehicle license fee.
There we go.
Excuse me.
Mayor, may I move to amend my motion?
Yeah, if the motioner and the second just agree to that change, I think we're fine.
So it would read, the first three words would be whereas, the first four words would be whereas the vehicle license fee. And then as I previously read.
I concur a second.
All right, thank you. All right, any further discussion?
If I could just speak in favor of it, Mayor?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to look to Councilmember Holloway or any of the council members to make sure I correctly captured what we were trying to put into the clause. Just please comment if I didn't.
All right, Councilmember Ross.
I guess my view is if we're going to add a whereas, to me, it's probably more detailed than what we needed. If we send out an informational statement that has all the different savings, that's what our residents are going to read. The paragraph that's there now, it it states like it's more equitable funding source. Sales and use tax we paid not only by city residents, but also by all persons and businesses who make sales at a retail goods, services, and uses within Snoqualmie. I mean, to me, that's what belongs in the ordinance, as compared to more detail on the savings would be more of an informational sheet.
Councilmember Holloway.
So I don't know that I get the vote on that informational flyer. You were asking me for a vote tonight. I need those factual things in the material that I am voting on. So I hear you, Councilman Ross, but point of order, I don't get to vote on those things, and those things are in the future. I'm being asked to make a decision on the material presented to me tonight, and I need that material complete. Just Holloway's opinion.
All right. Any further discussion on the proposed amendment by Councilmember Holloway? Councilmember Mayhew. Councilmember Holloway, did you have anything else? Your hand is still up. All right. Seeing no other hands up, this is a vote strictly on the amendment read by Councilmember Mayhew. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say nay.
No.
Okay.
Councilmember Ross, was that a nay as well?
It was an A, yes.
Okay, so the motion passes 4-2. All right, so back to the main motion with the amendment as approved. Any further discussion on the main motion? Councilmember Mayhew.
Yes, Mayor, and hopefully other council members have had a chance to see this. I had an email exchange with the city attorney, which you were all copied on over the last 24 hours, in which I initially proposed 4 changes. The city attorney correctly pointed out that one of those changes didn't make any sense. I had sort of, my words, not his, I'd sort of confuzzled 2 things. But The other three, I think, were amenable. Yes, I made that word up, Councilmember Holloway, confuzzled. You may use it. But the other three, I think, were amenable to the administration, and I think they may be helpful. So I'd like to move to have those three modifications made, and I can either put those on the screen if that's helpful, or possibly city attorney may have prepared something, I'm not sure. But I believe those three changes would just make this a bit clearer.
Bob, did you prepare a kind of a clean version?
I did, Mayor, and I haven't. I was attempting to capture the motion that was just made previously and passed in this. I didn't quite get all the words, but if the council wanted to substitute that entire revised version as a striker, that would probably be the best way to do it.
Yeah, I think, can you share that? Do you have it to share it?
I do.
Yeah.
It just
and since the
needs,
council was provided with a version from in via email from Councilmember Mayhew that showed the edits, after another meeting we had earlier today with the Mayor Pro Tem and the attorney, I reviewed those two. We were very amenable to the three changes, with the exception of the one that created more complications than improvements. So we're in support of the striker, but it was just that since you've already sort of seen the amendments, all we needed was a clean copy everybody could view. So if who's sharing the screen right now?
would you like me to do a screen share? Is that the best way?
Yeah, Brendan would have to turn the screen share off and then let you grab it. Brendan, are you able to stop sharing? At least it says it's Brendan Ecker's screen I'm seeing.
All right, can people see the ordinance?
Yes, we see it, Bob.
Okay. Councilmember Mayhew, do you want to walk through these changes, or do you just want me to?
I'm hopeful that everyone's seen them and didn't have any questions. Perhaps if anyone has any questions or needs them pointed out, we could do that. But otherwise, if everyone's seen them and is amenable, I don't need to talk them through.
The first one, just I'll add, the first one was an obvious one. It was more of a cleanup issue where we had made some changes to, rather than a two-step process of reducing the fee by 20 and then 20 a few months later, we would just do the clean transition. So that we were obviously very in support of it. It just cleaned it up and made it consistent with what we had seen in the presentations and the recent understanding on that.
And that would be this recital that is now the second to last whereas provision ahead of the one that was just moved by the Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, whereas effective upon approval of sales and use tax for the voters, the City Council also desires to amend the Snoqualmie Municipal Code to repeal the $40 vehicle license fee in its entirety. So that was a nice catch or cleanup on Councilor Mayhew's part.
This is the following recital just needs the dollar amount plugged in from Councilmember Mayhew's motion, which I wasn't.
Jim, do you have that dollar figure?
Yes, I've just emailed the wording to you, Mr. Sturbank, of my previous motion. You may be able to just cut and paste that right in.
Oh, it won't allow me since I'm screen sharing.
Yeah, the second bullet item basically captures the motion.
It's 550,000.
Yeah.
And the other number was 406,000.
There we go.
All right, so that was a whereas he did earlier that essentially captured what you had expressed a concern about, Councilmember Holloway.
Correct.
So
Jim, what were the other two items you're changing?
The additional change was to, in section 2 of the ordinance, there was a sentence that said the council would first allocate the funds to the certain TIP STIP projects and try to pay for the entire list. And then if it was not enough, use available funds in the council's discretion for the projects deemed most necessary. And that was to strike that, I think, in recognition of the Mayor Pro Tem's point a few moments ago that the projects on the list will far outstrip the available funds. And so it wasn't necessary to say the council was going to try to pay for all of the projects with the tax proceeds, since that was not likely to be feasible under any set of circumstances. So there was an additional sentence in between these two paragraphs in section 2 of the draft ordinance.
And the final one was adding language in the title itself about retiring the card tab fee. But as the city attorney pointed out, that would actually complicate things because that does not require a vote of the public. That's a council action. And that's already been stipulated in the prior whereases, and would essentially it's clearly committed to council that would be what the council would commit itself to doing, would be to repeal that.
And Mayor, the Mayor Pro Tem did also suggest language, though, with regarding the repeal, just making it clear that right here in the last sentence of section 6, that the repeal would be effective March 31, 2022, which is the day prior to the sales tax taking place.
Right. We didn't want it to be on April 1st. That just didn't look good optically for it to be on April Fool's Day.
So those were the 3 changes.
Yeah, April Fool's Day. We're going to repeal it on April Fool's Day. Yeah. All right.
Well, also technically you would have had both taxes in place for one day, which we didn't want.
Right. Okay, any further questions or discussion? On again, this is a Jim, you made a motion to this effect. Did we? I got to make sure.
Yes, this is a motion to amend the main motion with these changes.
Second.
All right, have a motion, a second to make additional changes as noted, particularly with an email provided by Councilmember earlier in the day. Any further discussion on this amendment? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay.
No.
All right, motion passes 5-1. All right, we're back to the main motion with, again, the two amendments as adopted. Any further discussion on the main motion with the 2 amendments as adopted? All right, seeing no hands go up, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay.
No.
All right, motion passes 5-1. Thank you, Council, and appreciate all your hard work on this, particularly Mayor Pro Tem, and also Drew. Drew did an extraordinarily quite a bit of work on this, and some very detailed, helpful work, I think, for everybody on this, addressing all the questions of council members and so forth. All right, with that, we will move on to reports. Parks and Public Works Committee, Agenda Bill 21048, Resolution 1585, awarding a landscape maintenance agreement to Monarch Landscaping, Washington, LLC.
Move that one back up. All right. All right. I guess Councilman will say I chaired, so I'll go ahead and do it.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
The 2018-2020 agreement between the City of Snoqualmie and Northwest Landscaping NLS, also known as Monarch Landscaping Washington LLC, for landscape services expired on December 31, 2020. Since then, the city has been paying NLS for services based on a reduced maintenance schedule. On May 25, 2021, the city received and opened bids for landscape maintenance services for the period of 2021 through 2022. However, only one bid was received, and it was $395,637 over the city's biennial budget of $949,509. Parks and Public Works Department intends to rebid in the fall of 2021, given the current lack of a contract and the immediate need for landscape maintenance services throughout the city. The department has negotiated agreement with landscape maintenance services with NLS for the remainder of the year, July 1, 2021 to December 31, 2021, in the amount of $258,821. Move to adopt resolution 1585, awarding a landscape maintenance service agreement to Monarch Landscaping Washington LLC. May I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, a second, to approve Agenda Bill 21048 as stated by Councilmember Holloway. As a remember, the public that would like to comment on this item prior to possible future or council action. Seeing no hands go up, council, any discussion on this item or questions? Councilmember Holloway, and I'll go to the chair first, and then Councilmember Mayhew.
Okay. Of note, the bid we've received so far is significantly more in what our current contract is, as well as significantly more than what we are paying for this extension. So by doing the extension with Monarch, again, we are assuming you want the grass cut in the swales and whatnot and the parks. We are saving the citizens money by extending the contract with Monarch, at least until we can go out and do probably a broader bid and see what the market can bear.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Mayhew.
Yeah, I believe I understand what's happening here, and I'm supportive, but I'm just a little, I just want to make sure I understand this. And really the purpose of my question is just to get at the idea of, or the question of whether we're going to have any reduction in services, service levels as compared to prior years. That's really all I'm trying to get to with my question. That the thing that caused me to have such a question, and maybe I don't have these numbers right, but as I understand what was just read in the summary statement, it appears that the bid was 1.3 million, 1.345 million for 2 years, because that's the budget there. It says it's a budget of 949 plus an overage of 395. So I put those two together and concluded the bid must have been 1.3 million for 2 years, which if I divide by 2 is 672,000 a year. Now I know that that probably wouldn't do it, year by year. But anyway, roughly 672,000 a year. And if I understand the number, if I also understand the numbers, the supporting numbers that were provided, we've got this proposal, which is 258,000. Plus, it appears we may have spent about 66,783 so far this year. So together, that's 325,000. So it appears, and maybe I don't have these numbers right, but it appears that in essence, their bid was 672,000. We've managed to negotiate for this year more like around 325,000. That's close to a $350,000 difference for the year, which I think is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I'm just wondering, is that because there's some difference in levels of service? And I just want to make sure I understand. I'm probably supportive, but I just want to make sure I understand the implications of our vote. So that's really my question.
Yeah, so Councilmember Mayhew, I'll try to summarize it from a high level and then turn it to Steve if he wants to add anything, or Steve Clark, our interim Parks and Public Works Director. We did all witness what was a notable decline in standards of service in the last few months. And that's indicative of the fact that, of the original contract or budget. Let's forget the 1.3 million bid number. That in some ways was irrelevant. And I guess the question I have for Bob or Steve is, does the council need to take an action to formally reject that bid? We've effectively been acting that way as administration to reject that bid. Since the contract came to termination at the end of 2020, we were immediately going into the slowest months of the year, January, February, March, where nothing's growing, the leaves are raked up and there's nothing growing, so it really doesn't need maintenance. So we could afford at that point to sort of say, hey, your bid's too high, we're just going to sit on this for a few months. And usually we would be paying them about $39,000 a month to come up with the $950,000 a year that was in the original budget. You cut the $950,000 a year in 6-month increments, and that's about $237 and change, $237,000 for a 6-month interim period. So basically, if we'd have been keeping service levels at the same rate, we'd have spent $237,000, not $66,000 to this point. So that drop in service level or any degradation you saw was more of a result that we haven't been investing those same dollars without a current contract in place. Well, now that we're negotiating this one against the end of the year, you see that number at $258,000 is within $21,000, pretty close to what the original contract was. It's just north of it by $21,000. So we fully expect the service levels for the next 6 months to get back to where they should have been. And Steve can speak to how we're gonna, we plan to get out there and actually, and monitor that work and make sure it's actually being executed. So we're seeing that service level bounce back. So to answer your question as succinctly as I can, no, we do not anticipate if this contract to get us through the end of the year is approved by council, we don't anticipate any further degradation in service. This, in fact, is going to finally get us back on track, so to speak, especially as we're going to the summer months with the Boeing Classic and others coming up. Steve, did you want to add anything to that, or did I mess up anything there to get that fairly accurate?
Well, I never disagree with the mayor saying he messed up anything. But good evening, council members. No, the mayor is absolutely correct. What we're seeing right now is really a gap in the process because we don't have a contract with NLS at this particular point in time, and because of the absence of that contract, you have seen a drop in services. What this contract will do is to reestablish an agreement with them to bring the level of service back up to where it was, and to carry it through to the end of the year and meet our needs. So there's different. The only difference is that whereas before they had a contract amount and NLS basically just took the amount of money and divided it by 12 in terms of their annual budget. This was specifically designed to look at the actual work that is going to be necessary to be accomplished during the next 6 months and look at an hourly basis and negotiate an hourly rate with them. So that's why you see a difference in price. And because of where we are in the season at this particular point in time, we think overall we will see a savings at the end of the year that'll carry over into the next year, 2022.
And Steve, could you quickly speak to the strategy that you're using to try to increase the number of bids or interest?
Well, one of the things that when you go back to the bid that we received, which far exceeded our biennial budget by about $400,000, we think that the total bid is really broken up into, or it's a composite bid of parks, streets, and storm system. So we think that in the fall, what we can do is we can break this bid apart into park, streets, and storm, and get it into definable areas that would attract more bidders that are not as large as NLS, and perhaps maybe some that are larger but just want to bid on a particular scope that they feel more comfortable with doing. So I think in the long run, is it a guarantee? No, I can't guarantee you that, but it's a strategy I think that has worked very, very effectively in other jurisdictions, and I think that'll the city will benefit by having more competition, more bidders. More bidders brings competition, and that brings savings. So we look forward to breaking up the bid and getting that out in the fall before the end of the year.
Yeah, and of course that doesn't preclude a larger group, company like NLS from bidding on all three of those. And if there's just a price, they might get it again. But we just want to create a more competitive bidding environment. But,
and they may sharpen their pencils because they have more competition.
Yeah. Councilmember Lassay, it seems like maybe your questions were answered. You had your hand up. You were waiting patiently. I appreciate your patience.
No, Steve responded to some of the items that I was going to mention in terms of the level of service. He's pointing out that the scope of work is available in a landscape maintenance contract attached to the agenda bill, and on page 7, it's pretty clear that they're gonna maintain what they had done before, but some variances to get caught up.
Great, thank you, Councilor Mayhew.
Yeah, thanks for the answer, Mayor and Mr. Clark. I think that sounds fantastic. Everything you just said. That's just exactly from a policy perspective what I'd love to hear from administration. You're thinking about how to do this smarter, and I think that's just fantastic. The one thing I just wanted to follow back on, Mayor, and it may be that I wasn't understanding well, but if it is true that we've in past years paid for sort of 3 or 4 or 5 months a year where, we're paying a monthly amount, but basically nothing's happening. It might be that this is a chance for us to realize, hey, maybe we can just repeat that every year. Now, granted, I know probably none of us, and Mayor, I'm pretty sure you're not pleased with how we kind of got into the springtime and we kind of got a little behind there. But so maybe we can't get all the months that we got this year, but it might be there's a few months when you negotiate this going forward where we don't need these services and there's a chance to save some money there too. But I trust you guys will all look at that as you go forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like how teachers get paid. They can either choose to have it spread out over the full 12 months or they get paid for the 9 months they work and not during the summer vacation. It doesn't mean you're going to get a savings per se if you do it on the 9 months and then don't pay the 3 months. It just means they're going to get more per month during those 9 months. So in other words, it would go from 39,000, or 40,000 on average per month to, little to nothing for 3 or 4 months, but then it might be $60,000 or $50,000 during those peak months. So, but we get what you're saying. Steve fully understands that, and those are things that, I should let Steve talk. I mean, maybe 39, maybe the monthly increments as NLS is requested is not the best way to go. But those are definitely issues that we have discussed internally and we'll be looking at as well. Steve, did you want to add anything or address that as well?
I think that rather than just have a bid over the entire year without breaking it out into what work is actually going to be done by on a monthly basis and what the expectations are, then you get more of a contract. I think that is probably more to the liking of what the bidder would be. You get a lump sum and you break it out and divide it by 12. They can make some expectations in terms of their personnel on a year-round basis. But from our perspective, it's actual work performed. And I think that it's incumbent upon the city and in the future, the Public Works Department is to get out there and do more inspections and make sure the work is actually being performed. And this is one of the reasons of the new bid was to hold them more accountable for the actual work that is being performed and pay them based upon the work that is being performed, not just necessarily just a flat dollar amount and expect that they will have to do that. So there's quite a lot of responsibility on the Public Works Office to make sure that happens.
Councilor Mayhew, that address your concerns or the point you were raising?
Well, I think I'm still confused about something, but you know what? Here's what I hear. This is the dollar amount that's being proposed here. It's a fantastic dollar amount. It's going to maintain our services the rest of the year. That's what I care about, and I think that sounds fantastic. Well done.
Well, I can assure you, I think the level of service that is going to get picked up here shortly after the contract is approved, and then the level of service that you have expected in the original contract that was done 2018 to 2020 will be reestablished.
Yeah,
great job.
My only concern and caution, and this is why it's important, as Steve is saying, we need to go out and make sure the work's being delivered, is if NLS is like many other companies looking for hourly workers right now, it's one thing for them to feel like they can get ramped back up and going at things hard again. And it's another to actually get bodies in there and do that. So hopefully they're successful in recruiting and getting their workforce ramped back up again. All right. I don't see any other hands or questions go up. So with that, if there's no concerns, all those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. All right. Motion passes unanimously. You knocked it out of the park, Steve. Thank you. All right. Senate Bill 21049, purchase of 11 vehicle and equipment replacements for the 2021-2022 biennium.
All right. The intent of this action is to approve the purchase and replacement of 11 vehicles and equipment. With approval, the city would replace 6 Chevy Tahoe pursuit vehicles and 6 Ford Interceptor SUVs, 1 Ford Crown Victoria with 1 Ford Interceptor SUV, 1 Chevy Silverado pickup with 1 Ford F-150 responder pickup, 1 Case backhoe for a comparable backhoe, 1 Cummins Onan generator for a comparable generator, and 1 Ford F-350 with a chip truck. The estimate cost to purchase 11 vehicles and equipment is approximately $1.12 million, and the delivery of the vehicles and equipment will likely take 10 months to complete. Move to approve the purchase of 11 vehicle and equipment replacements for the 2021 and 2022 biennium. May I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second to approve Agenda Bill 21049. purchase of 11 vehicle and equipment replacements for the 2021-2022 biennium as stated by Councilor Hall. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item prior to possible council action? I don't see anyone's hands go up, so any further discussion, council? Questions? Councilor Mayhew.
Well, I just think we may be overlooking, the antique value of that Crown Victoria, that's of an age now that many might view that as something we really should keep around for posterity. But
you jest, but Officer Fishbeck is actually quite attached to that vehicle, so he might agree with you. All right. Any other comments, questions, discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. All right, motion passes unanimously. Moving on to Agenda Bill 21052, Resolution 1586 to declare and authorize the sale of surplus property.
The intent of this action is to declare and authorize the sale of surplus property. Property includes 13 vehicles and equipment. Move to approve Resolution 1586 to declare and authorize the sale of surplus property. May I have a second?
second,
All right, I have a motion and a second to approve excuse me, just knocked my notes offline. To approve Agenda Bill 21052 as stated by Councilmember Holloway. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on this item prior to possible council action? All right, I don't see anybody's hand go up. So council, any further questions or discussion? Of course, these surpluses are the vehicles that are being moved out as new ones come in. That's related to the prior resolution on the fleet purchases. So any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. All right, motion passes unanimously.
I heard a distant nay, but one of the police department employees wanting to keep his Crown Victoria.
I'm sorry, what was that, man?
I think there was a plea in the distance asking for a Crown Victoria, but I think I might not.
I think I did that too. Yes, thank you.
And probably barking too, because that's the canine pooch's car.
Right. Yeah. All right. Any other report for Parks and Public Works Committee?
No report.
Community Development Committee report.
Just a brief one, the Community Development Committee, we will be sending the City Council the Shoreline Master Program updated ordinance, adopting the required and recommended changes from the Department of Ecology. And you'll see it Monday, July 26th for introduction, and then on August 9th for action. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And did you want to do any updates on the SWOT analysis or those issues, Councilmember Ross?
Actually, I brought that up last council meeting that Andrew Ballard is going to be doing a SWOT analysis with stakeholders, probably about 30 of them. And it will be through Zoom and using breakout rooms. And they will have the facilitator for each room that would be actually one of the participants and a recorder, which would be city staff. So this is something he's done before and has worked very well. So will be hopefully happen in July or in August.
Great, thank you, Councilmember Ross. Right, Finance Administration Committee. It looks like an agenda bill here, but this is just a kind of a limitation of the agenda bill builder. We just wanted to make sure the chair of the F&A committee had an opportunity to speak to an update on the results of the 2019 audit. So Councilmember Mayhew, I'll turn it to you.
Yeah, fellow council members and hopefully residents who are listening. We've just gone through an audit, and we've received the state auditor's office reports related to that audit. And it's audit is boring, so I'll just try and tell you the 4 highlights, which are very notable. The first is the primary audit that the state auditor does is an audit of our financial statements. All the numbers that say what money came in, where do we spend it? The way this works is it's our finance department's job to produce financial statements that report all that. The state auditor comes in and checks whether that those numbers are materially correct. They gave us a clean audit report, meaning that they did not find any material errors in those numbers. So that's a great report card. Our finance staff is producing accurate, reliable financial numbers. That's number one, financial statement audit. There's 4 of these. Number 2, they also did what they call an accountability audit, which means they look at specific areas of compliance and they look at whether there's adequate safeguarding of public resources. So from fraud and abuse. So they also, as part of that accountability audit, look at specific complaints that they may have received during the year from any interested parties who think, hey, we think something might be wrong, or I think something might be wrong in the city. They may not be complying with things. And so they looked at those. They had no items to report from their accountability audit. So a clean accountability audit, no areas of concern were raised by them. That means that, including those areas that even a council member has brought to their attention claiming weren't being done correctly. In fact, there was no finding by the state auditor that there was any issues of compliance or adequate safeguarding of public resources from fraud or abuse. That was number 2. Number 3, they can issue findings of non-compliance with financial requirements, grants, so forth. There were no findings. Number 4, despite all of that, auditors will almost always find some areas where they can make recommendations for improvement. Why? Because they see cities all over the state. Hey, maybe some other cities sort of found a way to do something a little bit better. So they'll say, hey, it's not that you're doing anything wrong, but why don't you look at this area or look at that area and maybe change how you're doing things and maybe improve things. In fact, there were no management letter comments. So this is a fantastic audit outcome in which the state auditor found no material weaknesses. They found our financial statements to be materially correct, no issues in the accountability audit, no findings, and in fact, no management letter comments were issued. By the way, most years we'll probably get management letters, and that's great. They just help us be better. But this year, there was nothing that was brought up by the state auditor, and I think that that is a fantastic outcome. And I think our finance department, the entire administration, the entire city staff is to be complimented on just doing a great job from the perspective of all of the things that the state auditor looks at, and our thanks for a job well done.
Thank you, Councilmember Mayhew. Appreciate the comments, and again, applaud the staff for the great work they did. That was very exciting. Like I said, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I can't recall a single year where you didn't get at least a management letter, even just a friendly suggestion of maybe some improvements you could work on. So that was quite remarkable. So great work. All right, any other, Jim, did you have any other, or Councilmember Mayhew, any other report from FNA?
No further report from FNA. I see that a council member has a hand up.
Oh, Councilmember Ross, go ahead.
Well, the state auditor's office also pointed out that there has been no findings since 2010. So that's represented, again, shows the internal controls that we have, and we just have a fantastic finance department. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, we'll, any report or any other report for Public Safety Committee?
I'd like to share a thought that around this time of year, around the 4th of July, preceding the 4th of July, there's a lot of anxiety voiced by some citizens. And I think there's some anxiety by the council and staff relative to how the 4th of July and how the fireworks will go. In the previous year, there was more fireworks, legal fireworks, because there was no red, white, and boom aerial show. But this year, Church on the Ridge went back to sponsoring, and we had some nice financial sponsors for it. In any event, I asked the chiefs to give a brief report, and both of them reported a generally uneventful 4th of July. And we'll get a more comprehensive report at the next Public Safety Committee meeting. I'll report to you those more detailed results about incidents that occurred. But this was a wonderful 4th of July, given the fact that there was extraordinary heat preceding it. There was dryness in the area. And in spite of that, we had a relatively successful, a highly successful and relatively uneventful 4th of July with respect to fireworks. That's all I had.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Jeans. Any liaison reports for committee of the whole? Councilmember Ross, go ahead.
So earlier today, I sent out the SCA Public Issues Committee pick packet, and there's three different areas that I put the pages on there that might be notable interest to you. One is something I'll be voting on in September, so you have some time to look at it. But the Sound City Association has developed guiding principles for Metro's 2021 policy updates. And it's asking them to consider different things like urge Metro to provide service for all communities throughout King County based on existing and future land use and growth management, to provide a robust public transit system that is accessible, safe, and efficient, and that's necessary to support the growth of healthy, livable, sustainable, and equitable communities. And then also to urge them to provide convenient connections from rural, suburban, and urban areas, which we would be part of that. So there's more detail. If you have any questions regarding that, please send me an email. We'll be discussing that this Wednesday and then voting on it in September. The other thing is countywide planning policies. There's information in there, and it looks like the Growth Management Planning Council has approved the CPPs. There's just good information in there if you want further information. And there's a lot of different charts with what our expected growth is to be, things like that. And then finally, the solid waste rate proposal. King County is proposing to increase our solid waste by 9.4%, or equivalent of 71 cents on average for the monthly bill for our curbside customers. So that will be going up in 2022. That is all.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Ross. Councilmember Jeans and Councilmember Mayhew.
The Railroad Days Committee met this morning. We are having Railroad Days sort of as usual. This year will be August 28th and 29th, which is a Saturday and Sunday. Most of the events will occur on Saturday. We're going to have a parade. And most of the Railroad Days is as it has been in the past. The thing that is new and exciting is the downtown merchants restaurants will be very active this year, and sort of a grab and go kind of a menu, and the ability of merchants to participate in Railroad Days is a rare occurrence, and that's something special that we should look to and cheer on. So the Art Commission met today, and the most exciting thing from the Art Commission is there will be a chalk the block. Chalk, chalk, chalk. It's a family event. It's going to be, in essence, on the sidewalks in front of the community center of the YMCA. It'll be on July 24th, so it's coming very soon, from 10 to 12. And families and kids are invited. The city will provide chalk, and I think it's going to be a special event that we'll have an opportunity to repeat in the future. We're starting to advertise it in a way that a lot of people will know about it before the 28th or before the 24th. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councilor Jeans. Councilor Mayhew.
That is just fantastic news about Railroad Days. Councilmember Jeans, that's just so exciting to hear. Getting back to normal is so important to our community, and that event is fantastic. My question was for Councilmember Ross. I know, and Mayor, I don't know, you may even have a comment on this. I know that with regard to transit, I know this is something that here in Snoqualmie, we've been working on for a lot of years, and I know, Mayor, you used to be involved, I think, on a committee trying to address it, which is the whole issue of trying to get more transit service out here. Geez, at least maybe commensurate with the amount of, a service level that's commensurate with the amount of taxes that are paid out here in Snoqualmie and in the upper Snoqualmie Valley here. Our service levels are so low compared to the taxes we pay. But my question, Councilmember Ross, is, do you have, what's your sense of these things that are going on with SCA around transit? So often these things end up being very focused, more in the sort of larger municipal areas, sort of closer to, shall we say, Puget Sound, and not so much out here in the East County. Is your sense that these sort of initiatives really do have some, improvements possible for us out here? And is there anything that we as council members can do in support of you or in support of this whole effort? And maybe that's not a question you answer tonight. Maybe you let us know, but I really think that that's something we could try to, and I know, Mayor, you've tried to in the past. It seems like something ought to try to make a difference on. It would really help, especially some of those folks that are at an income bracket where they may rely more heavily on transit to get to work and so forth. So any thoughts, Councilmember Ross, on that, or whether this will bring some help and how we might be able to assist as other council members?
I hope this will bring some help. I have asked, there was some conversation a couple of months ago, maybe it was through SCA, where the executive director of Metro did a coffee or whatever, so we were able to Zoom in. And I asked about service, especially coming across Highway 18 to Snoqualmie. And, they're not looking until like 2050 for that. And so, my goal is to bring that up. That's why I emphasize that they'll look at rural, suburban, and urban areas, because that's really important to us. I did hear that there were potentially 2 more buses added. So I want to get further clarification as to more information about that. But we'll bring it up.
And I'm sorry if I didn't CC the council on this, but the mayors, I did work with Amy from the Valley Shuttle to kind of draft a letter that then was put on a letterhead with, Mayor Carnation and Duval and North Bend and so forth, and myself to petition using some metrics and data that Amy had put together, them for additional increased services, and got a response from Metro, which was a polite suggestion that the resources just weren't there for now. I can say that my experience in the past when I was involved, it took an extraordinary amount of time and effort to extract what were fairly anemic results. I was successful in getting some of that shuttle service back when, you remember several years ago when they were proposing some cuts and went out with a first round, did the first round, and then stopped and didn't do the subsequent second and third round. And that's when we lost that express line. I think it was the 215 that went into Seattle based on some really crappy criteria or weighted criteria that were, I think, unfair, that many agreed to. That's when the executive put me on the service guidelines task force at that time. But we did manage to get the shuttles back. But the effort it took just to get that was extraordinary. And, so it's a little disheartening to think that it would take that similar effort to maybe get the same anemic results. But my analysis is it's a pretty tough uphill climb, because the raging battle that has perpetually gone on in the region, the King County region, has been an equity issue. But there's 2 fundamentally different equity issues sort of clashing together. One is about economic equity and putting those services where those most economically in need of them, which would mostly be on the south end of King County, versus geographic equity of making sure that those communities are paying significant dollars into the system, at least get a level of service back where they would feel like there's enough value to continue voting to support those services or voting for future, bonds and levies. And that's been a lot of tension, as you can imagine, in the current political environment in the past year. The geographic equity argument in that equation is sort of losing out. So it's even a greater uphill climb because of that in the current environment. So I don't want to be too dour about it, but I'm greatly optimistic that there will be increased services in the near need, but we have certainly made the efforts to convey clearly to them that we believe the services to be woefully inadequate, and they're not necessarily disagreeing with that. So, at the very least, build up a robust and frequent rapid ride along the I-90 corridor spine where we could create those artificial densities by a park and ride lot, like out by the interchange or in the business park, and then have a frequent spine feeding that. Mayor Mary Pauly in Issaquah is very supportive of that because she doesn't want downtown Issaquah becoming the parking garage for the region where everybody goes there to catch a bus or everybody goes there to catch a future light rail train. They need to distribute that a little bit more, and you can do that by at least feeding it. You don't have to do the spider web over the whole community, but just a really robust trunk line that feeds, again, those artificial densities with park and ride lots. So they have been real thinking. They backed away several years ago from this investment in park and ride lots, but much of the conversation brought them back to committing to those investments again. And there may be a possibility of some of that investment. That's one bright spot, is we may get that sort of support near the interchange here in the near future. So anyway, any other liaison reports? I don't see any other hands up. I'll just quickly, in terms of staff reports, I'll throw it out if there's any other questions from the staff. There's no written reports at the first meeting of the month. Councilor Mayhew, go ahead.
Just one comment really and perhaps I should make this to Councilmember Jeans and the Public Safety Committee, but it's really a comment for the police chief, which is, and it's subjective. So, I'm always somewhat hesitant, but it really does seem like the average speed, if you will, and the number of egregious speeders on the parkway really seems to be ticking up here in these summer months. And so I know we have a police force that stretches to do a lot of things, but anything that can be done to kind of help get that speed, controlled a bit better, not controlled, but, influenced a bit better. If you're able to, I think, it certainly seems would be helpful, because it sure seems like that's getting worse these days. Maybe it's because of the summer.
Yeah, well, I'll comment on it. I'll tell you that we have done two emphasis in the last couple weeks on the parkway that were directly associated with the speed on the parkway. We've also been dealing with some staffing issues, but we've been lucky enough to pick up a couple new officers here in the last couple weeks, and that'll certainly help us do the proactive enforcement that you're talking about.
Great. Yeah, we'll discuss that at the staff meeting tomorrow. We'll probably also do some discussion. There's a number of mayors around the region that are very concerned about the impacts of some of the new legislation around, police reforms that could be detrimental, and so maybe we'll take that to the Public Safety Committee and maybe have some briefing to review some of those changes and what those impacts might be. But I'll take that up and with the staff tomorrow. We'll make a plan about briefing the council at some time about that. All right, and then other real quickly, I guess my only reporter update is a couple of items. One is I was just checking the vaccine website, and I'm so proud of our community. They're just knocking out of the park. We've now achieved, for those that have both doses and are fully vaccinated in the 9065 area code, 77%. And to give you an indication of where it's going in the next couple of weeks, those that have received one dose is in excess of, it's 83.3%. So this community is just absolutely smashing and knocking it out of the park, which is really good news as we come into these months with events like Railroad Days and Boeing Classic to be in that position. And of course, the region overall is doing one of the best in the country. So just good news for all of us to really get open and get the economy moving again, our local economy. And then as far as the ARPA funds, I can't remember if I mentioned last time, we did get the first drop on that to the tune of about $1.9 million that we received. Our estimates initially for that first drop is that we can probably avail of using about $1 million or qualify for using about $1 million of that for city needs, which means a significant amount of money will be available to tend to the community's needs. So we're going to have some internal meetings on that to strategize but you can fully expect that we'll be talking about getting the band back together to look at distribution of those funds to the larger community. So just wanted to give you a heads up and make you aware of that. So again, any other questions from staff at this time before we wrap things up? All right, not hearing anything or seeing anything. With that, I don't know if there's any significant announcements anybody has, staff or council members, of things coming up of note. All right, with that, if there's no further business come before council, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting tonight. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Everybody go enjoy the rest of this meeting. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Night.